Benefactor underwriting for this broadcast has been provided by a grant from Republic Bank. The power of red is back. Major underwriting support for this broadcast has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Customers Bank, Collins Building Services, Marks Paneth. Additional underwriting support has been provided by grants from AmTrust Title, Bank of America, Capital One Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Catsimatidis Red Apple Group, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Ocean First Bank, RPW Group, TD Bank, the One Stop Property Group, and these friends. Where is my mentalist? That individual who was able to project the card that I had that I was picking out. That was the person that Ralph and I were with for a holiday celebration 2 weeks ago. I don't have mentalists today, but I have 3 business leaders providing their ideas of where they see 2022. Where are we going? My guests include Joseph Pistelli, who is the chairman and CEO of Pistelli Realty Group and the chairman of the board of First Central Savings Bank. Abe Schlistenfeld, who's the managing partner at Marks Paneth. And last but not least, my mentalist buddy, Ralph Bumbaka, who is the president of the New York City region for TD Bank. So, Joseph, you're not the mentalist. You're just the guy who knows what to do with the years. You play a dual role. You're a banker on one side, you're a real estate leader on the other side. Where do you see 2022?
I think 22 is going to be a good year. I think for both sides, I think 22 is going to be a good year. I think on the financial service side or the banking side, I think things are going to do as well as they did in 21. I think from the financial service side, 21, most banks did very, very well. I think they'll continue to do that. Investment opportunities in banking, obviously, the smaller the bank, the opportunities are smaller than the larger institutions have to diversify their investments. But I think in the long run, they'll do fine. On the real estate side, I think 22 is starting to show signs that more investment is going to take place in 22. I think people are getting a little bit more comfortable with what happened back in 19 when the regulations changed on that side of the boat. But I do think that a lot of dissatisfied customers still remain very uneasy with how they're going to invest going forward.
I mean, 2021 should be the year of the bank mergers. Do you see more mergers taking place?
I think the opportunity for mergers are taking place. Merging in the last few years has definitely changed from a multiple of book and how mergers were looked at 10, 12, 15, 20 years ago. That whole process has changed a lot as well. So I really think that mergers are there, sometimes not always for the right reasons. I still am a believer of a merger or an acquisition only serves a good purpose, not only for the purpose of growth, which is a good thing, but for the purpose of bringing something new into the surviving institution. I think that sometimes they lose that mechanism. I think the flagship New York Community Bank gives them that whole residential component, which is very important, I think, for them. And I think that the change of the CEO to Tom Gangemi, I think he's looking at different opportunities as well than just the entire commercial real estate investment for the bank. I think they're going to have a funny feeling he's going to look to be turning, I don't want to say turning it around, making changes in the bank itself, how its business models are looked at. I think that's true for them.
Abe, what's happening in the world with taxes? Okay, is the 1031, is the retirement benefits? Where do you see the world with regard to, Congress hasn't passed all this new acts. How do you look at your crystal ball with regard
You
to
know,
tax legislation?
these last 6 months have been quite a ride in the tax planning world, with a lot of ups and downs and what ifs and possibilities coming out of Washington, D.C. And every time there was a rumor passed, everyone went running to their tax accountants or their tax lawyers and the state lawyers. And it was a lot of activity that went on during the second half of 2021, with I'll use the words almost certainty, at least that's what people believe, of something happening. And then lo and behold, there was a Christmas present given by Senator Manchin, where basically just killed everything. And it did force a lot of people to do things that they probably should have done, but it got them to do a little quicker. Now we look forward to 2022. I think the general consensus in the tax professional community is that in a midterm election year, it is going to be extremely hard to get at least any significant tax legislation done, irrespective of whether the parties are there or the numbers are there in DC. But in a midterm year, it's really hard to get that type of significant legislation done. That being said, one thing I've learned over the years in DC is never say never, because they always seem to surprise us one way or another. But specifically, you mentioned the 1031s. Those are still alive, and there was a lot of talk about those being taken away. Thankfully, for the real estate industry, is staying alive, because 1031s really are a great way of keeping the real estate cycle moving without having people pay tax. There's plenty of ways that they pay tax, but it invigorates a lot of the tangential services, such as the brokerage and a lot of the other services that are aligned with the real estate industry. 1031s are really helpful there.
Ralph, you run the metro region, New York City region for TD Bank. You deal with medium companies and certain large companies. So I call them the middle market over there. How do you see the difficulties of a middle market company operating in these days?
Overall, we're seeing continued growth. Certainly, loan demand is continuing to stay at a high level. The interest rate environment is certainly going to get interesting, in that the Fed has announced the 3 hikes, which bode well. I think to Joe's point about mergers and acquisitions, certainly this is a business of scale, and we'll continue to see that on the banking front and taking market share. So I see the banks continuing to be aggressive, both on the loan and client acquisition side, and certainly in the opportunities to merge operations to create that level of scale that we need. The interest rate environment is going to create that level of opportunity for us. Inflation obviously is also weighing on a lot of companies' minds. So how they're going to be able to maneuver through those obstacles. But in all ways, I'm seeing it to be a positive outcome for 22. Yet still a roller coaster ride.
So I'm going to ask each one of you to provide your thoughts on this. Where do you see the best opportunities in the different businesses that you operate? Joe, you're in the real estate business and you're the banking business. Where are the opportunities for a bank who's about close to $1 billion in size?
I think depending on the type of business model you do, with relating to real estate lending, I myself personally think that those opportunities for a bank our side and even larger is really to enter the non-conforming residential loan market. I think that's a very unique market. I think it's a market that it goes after a very specific type of borrower, and provides a market share that isn't so, I don't want to say roller coaster ride, but I think it's a very different market. I think the commercial real estate side, it's a volume-based business. As Ralph said, rates are very, very low. Those rates are going to be repricing. I think heavy investments on the financial side, when you're matching cap rates and LTVs and all sorts of factors to renew those loans in this market may be a lot different. So I still see a bank like First Central where we become a unique lender, a niche lender, is very different to the larger banks. But I see a lot of opportunity for a bank like us to continue to drive in that particular market that I just mentioned.
With regard to the residential real estate that you own, you have a couple of thousand units. Do you see opportunities to purchase more units, or do you think it's a time that you should sell them and take the money and figure out what to use them for in your cryptocurrency, which is one of my questions also?
You know, Mike, I've been on your program many times, and my views have changed in the past, 10 years or so, even 5 years. My view on the commercial real estate market in New York, unfortunately, which I am heavily invested in the family business of what I'll call quality asset. We do take pride in our ownership. We have very nice properties throughout the boroughs. But I do think that the new laws that have been enacted in the last 24 months are they're very problematic. I think owners that purchased properties and rebuilt them and cleaned them up and went into neighborhoods that were up and coming, that can be a quick reversal at any time soon. There's such legislation out there that is so preventive on being able to at least get rents that you need to operate in New York. And I think that we'll talk right now, right? We have January 15th. We're supposed to see the lifting of the court system that is not helping to collect rents in housing. There's already bills being written to get passed by law that in the event that is lifted, you still will not be able to get in court and collect rent for delinquent tenants, among an array of other reasons why that can't happen. This is depressing the real estate market. Yes, as Abe said, the 1031 does help you if you sold a property, and that deferred tax burden is passed along. It does not change the fact that we deal with unions. It does not change the fact that raising energy prices that we need to deal with every day. And also, you have tenants that have low rents that move out, that automatically that should be an opportunity to at least bring that up to an 80, 85, even a 90% rate of what that market rent should be, even if it's not going to be 100% or 110%. But it should be where it's reflective to where the market is. And that in New York City is very prohibitive. So I really see that part of it not allowing real estate, commercial real estate or residential commercial real estate to appreciate at the level that its expenses are. I think that's a real problem. So I don't think it's the time to sell because I don't think the prices are there to sell. But to take options in selling, I think that's across a lot of people's minds. Look, there are people moving to red states, and we'll refer to that, where operating a real estate business, or any business for that matter, is tremendously inviting. When you hear how they treat new business in different states across the United States.
Abe?
So first I want to follow up on something that Joe said, because it's really an awesome point. And it almost hurts me to say this because, I love New York City. I'm a big believer in New York City, and I'm really hoping that with the new administration, there really will start being a tidal wave of change to allow business to be more friendly. But what we've been seeing a lot of is people selling in New York and doing 1031 exchanges for properties in other areas such as the red states or other business-friendly cities. So it really is coming to a point now, unfortunately, where New York City is not dead like it was a year ago, but for the longtime business owners, it's becoming harder and harder to at least rationalize it with yourself why you're continuing to not just do business in New York or own property in New York, but to expand that footprint in New York. And unless something is done soon, it's really going to start having some effects, on the New York City market. To specifically answer your question, in our industry, what are we looking to do different in 2022? Tax and account compliance work is nothing fancy, and that's not really where the future of our industry is. It's about a lot of advisory work where we're getting to technology advisory and transactional advisory, and it's a lot of advisory work working with real estate folks, such as those that are here on the call, as well as those that they service in the industry. And that's really where the future of the accounting industry is going. And we have a good footprint in the New York real estate market. And if you know your customer base and talk to your clients, advise them, and it's about educating your clients and working with them to make them more successful.
In the same vein as I just said, Joe and Ralph, with regard to mergers, do you see more mergers taking place in the accounting profession?
Yeah, there's a lot of M&A activity in the accounting profession, and a lot of that has to do with not necessarily bigger is better, but inherently when you're able to provide more services to your clients, and you have that depth and breadth of service. Clients are a lot more sophisticated than they were 20, 25 years ago. The whole business world is more sophisticated, and and it costs a lot to be able to build that infrastructure, whether it's the technology, the subject matter experts. It costs a lot of money, and when you can leverage on that as part of a larger organization, it makes a big difference. And then when you layer onto that, how long this talent shortage is going to go on for, I don't know. But it's something that's not just headlines, it's something that's very real. Putting aside those people that are leaving the various professions and doing a lot of things on their own, it's the younger, I call them kids, whatever they are, coming out of school. They're a lot more driven coming straight out of school than 10 years ago.
We hear a lot about from tenant organizations and city council and our elected officials throughout the city and state and counties about affordable housing. And affordable housing is a very good thing, and it is necessary. But what I do believe that happened, and I go back to June 14th or 16th of 19, when the whole rent stabilization law pretty much went out the window, I do believe that the best affordable housing program that New York City or New York State actually ever had, which created new housing, it created housing preservation, it created investment, and it protected tenants, as well as allowed the opportunity to go into neighborhoods and rebuild those neighborhoods. And that was the rent stabilization program. They took a program that completely worked for 30, 40, 50 years. There was nothing wrong with it. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Was either side happy? Absolutely not. But to take away good opportunity in the housing program, to replace it with, quote unquote, a progressive thinking, when there was no progress at all that took place in that change, created a bunch of lawsuits that have just cluttered the court system, and people who are no longer proud of what they did. And I think that is a sad, sad conclusion of what happened to that result. And our elected officials, and hopefully under the new mayor and the new leadership, that they reconsider at least bringing it back to some degree of what everyone knew, that they were protected in their homes and their investments were protected as well. And I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, I'd like to address the next point to Ralph and to Abe. How difficult is it for you to find the next generation of bankers? Years ago, people said, I want to be a banker. I think it's hard. In the same situation, I know, Abe, you're having difficulties. All the professionals are having difficulties to get new people. Ralph, how do you incentivize, or how do you get people to join the banking world today?
Banking is such a wonderful profession, and it requires a good ongoing mentoring program to really draw that interest into what we do, how we make a difference for companies, for people's lives, for our communities. So critical for that. So it is a big challenge for us, but yet there are those with finance and business degrees that want to kind of learn the language of business, which is accounting, and then to practice it with finding financial solutions and really engineering within the banking sector to deliver for clients. So while still challenging, we are seeing a number of candidates come through that still have a passion to learn that. But I think more importantly, it's on us, those that are in the industry, to mentor them through to see what the potentials are and how to put their talents to good use.
Abe?
So we actually start the legwork when they're still in school. We're very, as I'm sure a lot of industries are, we're very active on campus, getting to them when they're in their freshman, sophomore, junior years. Our intern program, which is probably accounts for 70 to 80% of our eventual staff, but they get hands-on experience at the firm. They get to see what real life accounting is like. We get to speak to them, get them to feel real happy about the profession. But then the reality is, along with the accounting part of it, they like to do the advisory work. I guess in the banking side, they like to do the accounting work, but in the accounting side, they also like to touch a little bit on the finance side and get involved in due diligence and things like that. No one wants to do the same thing every day, 5 days a week, the entire year. Everyone wants to maybe do something that most of the time, but then see other things, whether it's due diligence. A lot of them like to get into technology advisory side of things and try to do some of the other things that pique their interest while at the same time progressing in their career. Years ago, you just did your work and you moved up and that's it. It's a whole different environment.
With regard to that, years ago, people worked 5 days a week in the office. Okay, so my question today is, as we go with another variant now, and it looks like each and every day or each and every 6 months, there's a change over there. Do you see people returning to the office full time, or are we going to see a situation that very few people will work from the office on Fridays and Mondays? Where do you see that, Ralph? I think it's a big idea for TD because most of your people haven't returned to the office.
Mike, we're going to see more of a transition, I think, in what you outlined. So periodically coming back to the office, kind of getting acquainted again with that kind of an environment is going to be important. But for now, we'll eventually get to that hybrid type of an arrangement. But I do see long term, if I was to make a prediction, we'd be more in the office than at home for what we do, how we do it, and what needs to be done. We need to be out there with our clients in the communities, delivering our front line of bankers that are in our retail network, so critical to support them. So our interaction will be in the community, in the office, and interacting and really creating that culture that kind of really makes the difference for us every day.
Quick question about digital. I brought up crypto, Coinbase, all of these things. What's your thoughts, Abe? People have to ask you and your clients if they're hedging their bet with that, or are they being bigger gamblers?
So for starters, we don't accept payment in crypto. We accept payment in regular dollars. It's an interesting investment. I'm not a financial advisor. That being said, from an audit perspective, as far as auditing the values as part of our risk profile factor, we do not audit any companies because it's hard to evaluate.
So, where I'm landing right now is more on that blockchain technology. Those companies that are engaged in that ability and that speed of information and storage that really creates the value for me, the underlying value, as opposed to someone's speculating in whether something is pegged to a certain value in and of itself. So I think you're going to see some challenges in the coin business, but the blockchain is here to stay, and those companies that support that will do very well in this.
So here's the question. Castelli owns lots of real estate with small retailers. Have you decided to take cannabis or lounges for cannabis in your properties?
No, we don't have any, and we haven't decided to do that. No.
Ralph, any discussion of the bank lending to people, because it becomes approved on January 1st that you can open up lounges and you can have other things? The state is accepting it, but the federal government isn't.
So we're governed by federal rule and regulation. So we will continue to adhere to those restrictions.
Abe, what do you say
And
to
here,
a client when
we're
they're
a
saying
we're
I
a
can get a
government
good rent
contract.
from somebody?
We're a government contractor, and until the government makes it legal, it's hard to touch.
So, with like 30 seconds left, what do you want to see quickly for 2022?
I'd like to see us be able to go back to some type of normalcy. I would like to hope that the entire pandemic and the solution to the pandemic and the whole psychological side dealing with corona and the other viruses that are coming up with it truly begin to, they get a handle on it and keeps us safe and sound. I think right now that's the most important thing that we could ask for. And I think
Hey.
with that, we'll be in better shape.
Abe?
You know, I've been hearing a lot, and I use it a lot, especially now with the uptick. You know, make sure you test negative and stay positive. And with that kind of a feeling going into 2022, hopefully we'll really have a resurgence and get as back to normal as we can.
Yeah.
Ralph, with our mentalist over there in the Jack of Spades, where do you see it?
So with the new city administration coming in and Mayor-elect Adams surrounding himself with real high-quality commissioners, I think the future looks bright for the city. I think a lot of the issues that have been plaguing this will be worked on, and a combination of understanding and dealing with the virus and dealing with our issues that we're faced with here on the legislative front with good, strong leadership, I think bodes very well for the city. I'm very optimistic, Mike.
I'd like to thank my friend Joe, Abe, and Ralph. Only good things in 2022. Only health for my friends, and hope to see all of you face to face soon. See you next week.
Thank you so much. Bye,
Thank you, gentlemen.
everybody.